Okay, welcome everyone on this wonderful Tuesday evening. If my voice sounds a little bit waggly or wiggly, it's because I had a tooth pulled. So besides the cold, I also had a tooth pulled. So this year is like pulling teeth. In our tour through this wonderful Masechta, we are dedicated by anonymous donor, A.B. Spry, L'Refuah Shalema for Toiba Reiza Bas Hinda, and also for excellent zivugim for their daughter and their grandchildren. We're also sponsored by Shelley Zeitlin for his children, Eli, Orit, and Ora, and for my refuah, my Shemaya ben Esther Fradel. We also have an anonymous donor for the spiritual, emotional, and physical protection for Yeshua Benach Mendel, Ben Bela Shadel Rivka. I also got a call from a virtual viewer that we should please learn Leilui Nishmas, Chaya Gittel Bas Berechyo, Neshama should have a lichtige Gan Eden. Okay, we are continuing we are holding V'Rabbanon de Pligi Alei de Reb Shimon, which is 2 lines from the bottom of Daf Yud Aleph Amud Beis. V'Rabbanon de Pligi Alei de Reb Shimon, the rabbis that argue on Reb Shimon, and they say Leiv Bezdin Masne, that the heart of Bezdin stipulates so that in case the sheep that were in the bullpen of the Tamimim are not available for are not needed for this year, that they could be redeemed even unblemished for the next year. That's how they were stipulated. So, maninu. Again, the bottom line of Yud Aleph Amud Beis. Who are they? Who hold not like that? Iname a Rabbanan de Ketairis, because they say that you could redeem the Ketairis. And you know something, we welcome back Mel Zachter, who just got up from Shiva. Mel, it's good to have you back. If it's
good to be back.
Yeah, Mel, give us the name.
Yisrael Yitzchak ben Eliezer.
We learned from Mel's wonderful brother, Yisrael Yitzchak ben Eliezer. His neshama should have a lichtige Gan Eden. So, if we'll say that it's the Rabbanan Mel, we're on the top of Yud Beis Amud Aleph.
Thank you.
If we'll say that it's going according to the opinion of the Ketairis, where we say the surplus of the Ketairis could be redeemed, so maybe the Ketairis is different because there's no other option. Shani Ketairis deloi bar re'iyah. It can't be left out to pasture and get a mum. But the sheep, which can be left out to pasture and get a mum, maybe we don't resort to a stipulation. El Rabbanan de Para. It's the Rabbanan of the Paraduma that say that the Paraduma, if you find a better one, could be redeemed. Says Gemara, well again, Dilma Shani Para, maybe the Paraduma is different, the Damel Yakarin, because it's very, very expensive. The El Rabbanan de Amrulai. It's the Rabbanan of those that said to Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon said that a soyer that is lost or not used for, let's say, the Musaf of Yom Kippur, it could be used for the Musaf of Reish Chodesh. If it wasn't used for the Musaf of Reish Chodesh, Musaf of Yom Tov, or if it wasn't used for the Musaf of Yom Tov, it could be used for the Musaf of Reish Chodesh. So they said to Reb Shimon, according to you, that you hold that each one has a different kapara. Each one has a different kapara. Reish Chodesh is mechaper for a Torah that eats kachim b'tumah, and Yom Tov is mechaper ve'ein ba lo yediyah b'tchila v'lo b'seif. Each one is different. How could they be brought for one another? So the implication is that the Rabbanan say it can. Now, why would they hold it can if it's for different purposes? It must be because they hold leiv bezdin masna. Says, well, who says? B'maydi Rabbi Yehudi. Who says it's going according to Rabbi Yehuda? V'achi kamalei bishlei meladidi. It's good according to me. Da'amino leiv bezdin masna aleim. That the heart of the court stipulates so that if they're not needed for their purpose on the Musaf of Yom Kippur, it can be used for the purpose of Yom Tov. If it's not needed for Yom Tov, it can be used for Reish Chodesh. La'achi yikravu el l'didach, but according to Yerub Shimon, that you don't hold of lei bezdin masna, the amret lei, then amai yikravu. You say, l'didach the amret lei, amai yikravu. Now Reb Shimon answered, because he holds they all fall under the same common denominator of Tumas Mikdash and Kedushin. But maybe the Rabbanan hold like Reb Meir. The Rabbanan hold that all of the Seirim are mechaper for the same thing. Dilber Reb Meiri, V'achi kamalei, Bishlam l'didi, Da'amina kol Seirim, Kaparos and Shava, they all come to be mechaper for the same thing. Mishamachi yikravu. Eladidat, but according to you, amai yikravu. So we don't have an author of someone who holds leiv bezdin masna. Says the Gemara, okay, El Rabbi Yochanan, Gamra Gamela. Rabbi Yochanan had a tradition from his Rebbeim, L'divrei Rab Shimon, tradition from his Rebbeim, that the Rabbanan hold that leiv bezdin masna lein. That L'divrei Rab Shimon ain't niptin, L'divrei Chachamim niptin. Says the Gemara, Rab Shimon, the less leiv bezdin masna lein, according to Rab Shimon, who doesn't hold of leiv bezdin masna, then what do we do with the extra sheep? My avdin lahu. So here the Gemara has a surprising answer. So what was the problem? Because the sheep in the bullpen can't be used for the commitments of the next year because they weren't bought from the shkalim, the new shkalim. Right? The communal korbanos have to be brought from the tiklin chanatin, from the new shkalim. Says Gemara, you're right. These sheep can't be used for communal obligations. So what are they used for? They're used that when business is slow on the Mizbeach, so in order that the Mizbeach shouldn't look idle, it's not a good thing for the Mizbeach to look without any business. Same thing. It's not good for a successful person to look idle. It's not good. I never saw Rav Moshe idle. I was Mishamashim for 10 years. I never saw him idle. Either he was learning Mishnayos, he was learning Tanakh, he was writing his tshuvas, or he was giving somebody advice, but he was never idle. It's not good to be idle. Now, I'm not saying that a person can't relax. You could relax. That's also not idle. Now, big people relaxed with Torah. Torah is Hashem Tamima Meshivas Nefesh. People that weren't so big, they relaxed with a game of chess. That's also not being idle. So, the Gemara has this nifty answer. Amar Reb Yitzchak, Amar Reb Yochanan, Makitzin Bahen Esam Mizbeach. They used it for the dessert on the Mizbeach, because that, just like the carbon Torah was an oila, they offered also on the Mizbeach an oila. And it was used for dessert on the Mizbeach. Now, since that's not a communal responsibility, therefore it doesn't have to come from the new shkalim. And we welcome in Aaron Swade. Aaron, it's great to have you. And Aaron will tell you where we're up to. We're holding on Daf Yud Beis Amud Aleph, and we're holding 13 lines from the top. 13 lines, some gesund. 13 lines from the top. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, she'akol niyeh b'dvaro. telling you, Rabbi Say, the Olam has a special zuchus. I had a tooth pulled 2 o'clock this afternoon. I was bleeding pretty heavily. And here I am saying shir. It's a schus of the Olam. And you know what? We could pause to welcome in our wonderful Talmidim, Irving Fishbaum, Ruvain Pollack, Yitzi Fuchs, Shelley Zeitlin, and our Shalom Bayis expert, Marshall Castle, Shalom Fogel, Saba, Danny Vogel, Menachem Umansky, Mo Kushner, Dr. Guy, Chaim Lerner, Jack Warman, Yaakov Warman, Eddie Chazan, Mel Zachter, Dr. Black, Dov Salkowitz, Barry Cement, Stephen Holtzman, Aaron Swade, Rabbi Kranz, Naftali Jablin, Nachman Chapler, Moshe Lehman, Berish Gesserman, Yeshua Shmuel Eisenberg, Ilya Shutman, Abe Arbach, David Helfgott, and Kol Here in the shul, we have Chaim Kramer, Michal Avram back at his post, Reb Kraus, Ruvain Shanet, and Avram Rezepkowitz hiding over there, but very, very, very apparent. So now the Gemara says, Amar Rav Shmuel bar Yitzchak, Omoider Reb Shimon b'seirei chatas, that if there is a sore of the chatas, she'ein, let's say, the sore of Reish Chodesh Adar, which was a sore of Musafin, was left over. And now the next time you could bring it would be for Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Now that's a chatas, and it can't be brought on Rosh Chodesh Nisan because it has to come from the shkolim, because the sor is a communal responsibility. There we cannot offer it up as an oila, because since it has a kedushas chatas, we can't switch it to use it as an oila. The kaitz mizbeach is only burnt offering. So Meider of Shimon b'sirei chatas she'em akitzin begufan, you can't use it as dessert, the animal itself, ela b'dmeyan. You can only use its money, meaning that you have to let it pasture until it gets a mum, then we redeem it, and we use its money to buy an oila on the mizbeach. Says the Gemara, why? It's only over there by the surplus of the carbon tumid, which the tumid is an oila, and now you're using it as an oila. Aval hasam demei kara chatas v'hashta oila, that initially it was slated to be a chatas, and now you want to use it as an oila. We can't do that because gezeira la'achar kapara. It's a decree that you can't do it even though the purpose of its atonement was already achieved, that you might come to use it even before and switch it off to be an ayla, and that would be a real no-no. Amar Abaya, Afanan Nami Tanina, we also learned the same mechanics. Par v'sar shel Yom HaKippurim, the bull and the sar of Yom Kippur, she'avdu v'hifresh acherim tachteim. So you replace them, v'chein sirei avodah zarah, where there was an erroneous psak, and Klal Yisrael did a sin of idolatry, and they lost the sar she'avdu v'hifresh acherim tachteim, and they replaced it. Kulan yamusu. These have a din under the rule of 5 chatois that have to die, and one of them are chatas that got lost, so they have to die. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon says that rule, that if chatas gets lost, it has to die, is only by a chatas of a yachid. A chatas of a community never dies. So Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon, Yiru achi yistavu, you let it pass until it gets a moment. Then you redeem it. And its money is used to bring an oila on the mizbeach, a communal oila, when the business is slow. She'ein chatas tzibur meisa. So the question is, why don't you bring the animal itself, since its purpose was served? Why don't you bring the animal itself as an ayla? V'amnai nikruvu inu gufayu ayla. It's a decree that you shouldn't switch it from a chattas to an ayla after its purpose was fulfilled. That you might come to do it before, which is of course a no-no. Amarava. Afananami tanina. We learned this idea in another place. Let's say we know that we have the very rare situation that we buy twin goats, shavin b'kaima, b'maro, b'damim. They're the same in value, in appearance, in height. And one is, we cast lots. One is for Hashem and one is for Azazel. If one of the goats dies, so now you have to pick another two, because you have to assign. Let's say the Sola Hashem died. So you're going to have to make another Sola Hashem, but you can't make it without a Gairul. So you have to take another two goats. One is Hashem, one is for Azazel. What do you do with the extra goat? The other one of the earlier pair. So says the Gemara, Vasheni, the one left from the first pair, Yirachi Yistav, is left out to pasture till it gets a mum. V'yamacher, it's sold. V'yiplodam of l'nadav. But why can't it be offered itself as a carbon ayla? V'amai yikrav iu gufe ayla. Elav shmamina gezera acha kapara, after its purpose was fulfilled, atulufnei kapara.
Count the Omar. Count the Omar.
Okay, everybody heard that? You should count the Omer. Now,
Nice. I like that one.
How would they get a moon? How is an animal out in the, grazing in the field? How does he get a moon? A shepherd's watching. How do they get a moon?
it's a very, very tough process. This has, I actually know a yeshiva young man that became a rancher. And there's an arrangement that an animal should not get Kedushas Bechar, because you sell part of it, you give a portion of it to a guy. He forgot to do it by one animal. So now it's an animal with Kedushas Bechar B'zman Hazeh, you have to leave it until it gets a moon. And that means letting it run around in an area, perhaps for years, until it falls and gets a moon. It's a very tedious, hard process. We don't realize it. We always say it in the Gemara, but it's very complicated. We did that. We put Barry out to pasture, and it took quite a long time.
Barry, show me your moon.
Yeah. Now,
This is G-rated, so we can.
the fact of the matter is, Marshall did it very easily. Anyway, says the Gemara, this is unusual. How many rayas the Gemara is bringing to this concept? Oshim shemeisu balav, a oshim whose owner died, oishin is skapru balav, or the owner offered another guilt offering, so this is an extra. Yirachi yistav, it should be left to pasture until it gets a mum, v'yimacher, v'yiplun dan b'ledavar. Rabbi Eliezer holds that the halach l'meishim Sinai of a chatis shemeisu baleha, or shekipru baleha, embraces an ashim too, because it says kachatis ka'ashim. Rabbi Yeshua says, you're right, you wait till it gets a mum, you redeem it, but instead of bringing a communal ayla, you bring a personal ayla. Yavi bedam of ayla. The question is, according to Rabbi Yeshua, and according to the Tanakama, why do we have to wait until it gets a moon? Bring it as an oila. The likar haguf he guf oila, it itself as an oila. Says Gemara lav gezer lacha kapara to lefnei kapar shmamina. Tanya nami hachi. We learn likewise. Mahin mevian min hamoisrus. What do they bring from the surplus animals? Those surplus animals that were left over. Kayitz, dessert on the b'nei mizbeach, kib'nei shuach lemizbeach, like white figs on the mizbeach. Now the Gemara thinks it means that you could bring white figs on the mizbeach. Of course, white figs that produce honey can certainly not be brought on the mizbeach. V'aksiv kichol sa'ar v'chol dvash, all yeast or sourdough and honey. Lo sakrivu, you're not allowed to bring. Lo saktiru, you're not allowed to smoke up as a fire offering. Tani Rav Chanina, no, it means kibnei shuach la'adam. It's dessert for the mizbeach, as white figs is dessert for a man. Now, Dorish Rav Nachman bar Rav Chisda, this is an interesting sidebar. Let's say you have a surplus oilas oif. You sacrificed. You had to bring an oilas oif, and and you lost it, and you offered up another one, and now you found the first one. So the Mishnah, the Rav Nachman bar Rav Chisda says, "Ein makitzin ba'olas oif." You cannot use as dessert on the mizbeach oilas oif. Amar Rava, so Rava says, "Ha burka." This is just made up. There's no reason for this halacha. So Rav Nachman Yitzchak said, "Why?" Amalei Rav Nachman Yitzchak l'Rava, my burkasa, why is it made up? Ano amrisa nihale, I said this. Umishmei de Rav Shimi min Arda amrisa nihalas, and I said it in the name of Rav Shimi min Arda. Dam Rav Shimi min Arda, moisrais lenidva sibarazle. The surplus goes for communal offerings on the mizbeach. The ein oilas oif betzibur. There is no communal offering from a bird offering. This is a kachim rule. Lock it into your head. This is a very fundamental rule. We'll use it when we get up to Zvachim. Before you know it, we're going to be learning Zvachim. There's no oilas oif betzibur. Now the Gemara tells us, switching tracks, the Gemara says that Rabbi Yochanan said that the extra tmidin are offered up as kayetz hamizbeach, right? Because according to Reb Shimon, we don't say leiv bezdin masne. The heart of bezdin stipulates. V'af Shmuel sabalot to Rabbi Yochanan. Reb Shmuel also holds of Rabbi Yochanan. Dam Rabbi Yudah Shmuel karbanas tzibur. The karbanas of the tzibur sakan moishachton lama shehin. The knife draws them and pulls them to which direction they go. So originally, this animal was supposed to be a carbon tamid, and now it can't be offered because it's from the old year's shkalim. So when they shecht it, the knife determines that it should be for kayetz hamizbeach. Tanya nami hachi. Moed Reb Shimon b'soyer. Reb Shimon admits by the he-goat. Shem loy karav b'regel. If it's not offered on the Yom Tov, yikra b'reish chaydish. V'im loy karav b'reish chaydish. And if it's not offered on reish chaydish, yikra b'yom ha'kippurim. V'im loy karav b'yom ha'kippurim. If it's not offered on Yom Kippur, yikra b'regel. V'im loy karav b'regel zeh. And if it's not offered on one Yom Tov, yikra b'regel acher. Why? Since initially it came to atone on the outer altar. So since it was used for an outer altar, so therefore it could be switched from one designation to the other. And this is like we said, since all of them are under the rubric of Tumas Mikdash and Kedusha. So they're like one Ola being switched to another Ola. Now, finally moving on, the Mishnah says, V'alzdoin Tumas Mikdash and Kedusha, Sora Nasa B'fnim. This is a big Kiddush. On willful, if let's say, who would do this over here? Marshall. Marshall is Tameh and he willfully steps on the Harabayas. Or he's Tameh and he willfully eats kosher. So we would think there's no hope. There is. V'alzdaim tumas mikdash kedashim sa'ah nasa b'fnim. The sar that's offered in the Kodesh Kedashim and the Kodesh and on the Mizbeach Hazav, and Yom Kippur is mechaper. So where do we know? This is an anomaly. Usually karbanos are only mechaper for shogeg. Usually karbanos are not in the periscope of Marshall, because Marshall, he does things on purpose. But here, not immediately, the Tan Rabbanan v'chipar HaKodesh mitumas b'nei Yisrael, the pasuk says, from the tumas b'nei Yisrael u'mepishayim, and from their rebelliousness. Oh, rebelliousness means on purpose. Says the Gemara, Psham elo amaradim. These are things that are done in the spirit of martialist, in the spirit of rebelliousness. Says the Gemara, V'cheinu aimer. So it says, Melech Moav Poshabi, the king of Moav, rebelled against me. Oz Tishma Livna Ba'isari. Then Livna rebelled at that time. Now the pasuk goes on to continue and say, Chatois elu ashkagas. Chatois are those things that are done unwittingly, right? That's things that we didn't mean to do. V'cheinu aymen nefesh ki sechete b'shkaga. A person, here we link chet to shogeg, nefesh ki sechete b'shkaga, who sins unwittingly. Now the Mishnah goes on to say the very great chiddush that the Sar Azazel, and again I told you, every time I learn a Gemara about Sar Azazel, I'm over the moon. Because the Sar Azazel is mechaper even without tshuva. And we don't have a Sar Azazel, so the closest we get to the Sar Azazel is to learn about it. So it should be mechaper our sins even without tshuva. It's really a whopper. It's Mark Frankel. We miss you here. There's a shout out to Mark Frankel. Make sure to think about this when you're listening to the share, which we know we will. You know, it's a bonanza. It says, "Al shora ve'visha b'Torah, hakalais v'achamurais," those that are lesser, and those that are more severe, the easier and the more harsher, has dainais v'ashkagais, those that are done willfully, those that are done unwittingly. Then it goes on to say, which seems to be superfluous, asay, lois asay, chorus, misas bezdin, haida if you know about it, loy haida if you don't know about it. Haida sounds like zadan, loy haida sounds like shogeg. Asay and lois asay sound like kalas, chorus and misas bezdin sounds like chamurais. And that's what the Gemara says. Hainu kalas, the lighter ones, hainu asay v'lois asay, those are the positive and the negative. Chamurais, hainu krisais and misas bezdin, chorus and capital punishment. Haida, hainu mezid, that's deliberate. Loy haida, hainu shogeg, that's unwitting. Rav Yehuda says, okay, good question. But hachikama, there's nothing extra over here. You have to know how to learn it. Hachikama. Al shara ve'erish b'Torah. For other sins, ben kalais, ben chamuris, whether lesser ones, whether severe, bein she'asim b'shogeg, bein she'asim b'meisid, whether you did it unwillingly or on purpose. Now, further qualification. Oisan she'asim b'shogeg, bein noida lo yisveiken, whether Mel found out that he did it, whether he found out that, see, definite sins can be brought chatas. So when we say that Yom Kippur is mechaper, it means on sins that Mel is not sure whether he did. So then the Sol Azazel is mechaper. Bein noida lo yisveiken, whether he knew about the doubt, he had 2 pieces of meat and one wasn't kosher and he ate one of them. Bein noida lo yisveiken, or even if he didn't know about his doubt. Now we said kalos and chamurais, so now we define that. Ve'elu hein kalos, these are the lighter ones, aseh v'lo aseh, a positive command and a negative command. Ve'elu hein chamurais, krisis and Mrs. Bezdin, those that carry a penalty of chorus, like sleeping with a sister, like eating or working on Yom Kippur, and Mrs. Bezdin, like adultery, Chil Shabbos, idolatry, those are more severe. All of these are atoned by the Sor Azazel, even without tshuva, which is a rather remarkable thing. And if you remember, I told you that Rav Miller gives an insight into the Sor Azazel by saying that many of the things that we do today are only because the Sor is the hairy one, Esav. And it's only because of our influence from the Goyim, because we are forced to be in Golas, that we would come to such things. You know, it's very sad, but there are specialists that specialize in incest by Fruma people. How could a Fruma person be guilty of incest? But living in the immoral society that we're in now, that's how it's possible. But if you would take away and push off the cliff the influence of the guy, then we wouldn't do it. Now we'll stop over here. Tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem, we'll have also a Chumash shir. I also want to just let you know about a new shir that we introduced tonight. As you know, we do the Mishnah Yomis between Mincha and Mariv, and then while I wait to count Sviru, we have about 6 minutes, so I say a few words. So since the Mishnah Yomis started Pirkei Avos, I instituted that the 6 minutes will be on Pirkei Avos. So there's a new series started tonight called Quick Thoughts on Pirkei Avos, number 1. And every night we'll have a few quick thoughts on Pirkei Avos, so you can check that out. Thank you for joining us, and have a wonderful evening.